my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and it is Thursday, so it means time for our Thursday Trends episode. Man, can I pause for a second here, if you will allow me to, before we get into this week's stories. I just want to publicly, out loud, say how proud of myself I am. Give myself a little pat on the back here, because I have been just going at it when it comes to a few particular goals and a couple projects that have been, really important to me, that I think are timely, that I need to get done. And I have one left. It was three really main big projects that it was like, I just got to get this done. And I'm proud of myself because I just sort of managed to put everything to the side and just lock the fuck in and just say, hey, anything that does not need to get done today is going to get put to the side in lieu of just getting this project across the finish line. And this morning I sent out an email that put the bow on my end, at least as it stands for now, of a particular project or idea. And it was like a risky, without getting into details, it was a risky email, just like an unsolicited one to a very high up person that I somewhat know at a company that I've worked at. But I did it. I'm proud of myself. And this is what I talk about. And I'm not going to turn this into a whole motivational episode. I know this is the Thursday Trends episode, but this is what I talk about, the idea of achieving failure, right? I don't know what's going to happen with these two projects that I've just wrapped up and that I'm kind of just now, putting out there to the world, to the people that I need to sort of bring them fully across the finish line, right? I've kind of done my part as it stands, and now I have to just sort of release it to the world and see what happens. Now, regardless of, if they lead to the overarching larger goal that I have for myself, I've already achieved a success because I put myself out there. I did something. I tried something. I went for it, right? I completed it now to the best of my ability of as far as I could possibly take it. Now, obviously, the goal is to have people be excited about the idea and to give me the means to bring it to life. But I can't control that. And also, again, I've won. Even if I fall short on that particular goal, I've still achieved within the grand scheme of it, right? Even if that is a failure in terms of the grander goal, I have still found success with the idea that I completed, tasks for that goal. I've made progress, right? And I've gotten better and I've learned things along the way, right? One of the things I learned is, I know I'm late to the party on this. I was really against it, but ChatGPT and AI and how it basically is like, can give you an entire staff of people if you know how to like give it the right prompts and cues, and it's like streamlined my process 10x, and I'm so mad at myself that I was like pushing against it before, but I get it now. Anyway, that's just me patting myself on the back. I could go on a tangent about AI, but if you haven't tried like ChatGPT and all these things, figure out a way to make it work for you, because it will make your life a hell of a lot easier. With that said, this is Thursday Trends. So we're going to talk about stuff that happened this last week. We'll talk about the Democratic National Convention. A lot to unpack there. We'll talk about the latest in Venezuela, where the presidential election was in question. Their Supreme Court has made a ruling. So we will talk about that. And on the positive side of things, for our Mi Gente segment, we will go to Puerto Rico, where I actually will be next week. So just a heads up, no podcast next week. I will be unplugging in Puerto Rico. But I'll give you specifics when we're going to come back after that, after we get into all the stories. But in Puerto Rico, you have an artist who's saying, I'm more than an artist, and they're giving back in a much needed way. And this is what I want to see more of. So let's just get into it. We'll first start, as we always do, with the nonsense, the BS, in a segment called For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, let's start with the Democratic National Convention. It had been going on for the last few days. And do I start with the good, bad, the ugly? I mean, listen, on a positive, the energy was incredible. When you think about where we were just a few short weeks ago in terms of enthusiasm for the Democratic ticket when it was Joe Biden at the top of it, we were in a dark place. Now people are excited. There are happy tears happening in the crowd. I love the clapbacks that are happening. Obama taking shots at Trump, Michelle Obama taking shots at Trump, Hillary taking shots at Trump. You know, I think we are finally beginning to get it, where you have to fight fire with fire at times, right? And I think you could do it in a dignified way, but still, get your point across. And I think that they achieved that, right? And I think as a younger person, us young people, I know I'm not that young anymore, but it feels good to say it. Us young people, I think, can appreciate, stepping up and having a good clapback and being unafraid to have an unapologetic opinion on somebody who is a incredibly negative force and has, somebody who has been incredibly toxic and gone extremely low with lies and just all sorts of disgusting accusations. I think sometimes you just got to hit him back every once in a while, right? You got to punch a bully in the mouth every once in a while. And I think that's what we see with some of these speeches. And also, like, the emotion, right? Obviously, one of the big ticket items here when it comes to the sort of stance that politicians have, one of the bigger things that differentiate the Republican Party from the Democratic Party right now, among many things, is the topic of abortion, a woman's right to choose. And even beyond abortion itself, the evangelical church has taken a national stance of saying they're even against IVF, right? They're against the idea of, and I'm not an expert on this, by any means, but my understanding of it involves, freezing eggs and insemination and all these things, right? These fertility treatments, basically for people who are having trouble having kids. And their stance is that oftentimes in the IVF treatment process, they produce more eggs than are needed as a means of giving the woman a better chance of getting pregnant, essentially, right? And that those eggs that are left unused are then discarded of, and that's what they're against. And you have the vice presidential nominee, Tim Wells, and he, was giving a very emotional speech in regards to that, because apparently him and his wife, they used... See, this, and of course people are like gonna get caught up on things because he was obviously critiquing from this stance of the sort of hardcore anti-abortion, woman's right to choose. The real pro-lifers here are against even IVF, and Tim was using his own personal story of him and his wife's struggle of being able to have children as a means to express how important it is to be able to have these options available to those who need it, right? Now, Tim and his wife, they clarified that they actually used IUI, which apparently is different than IVF. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to bother to try to get into the differences here, right? But there's a big critique now, like, oh, he's lying about this thing, but people are missing the sentiment, and I hate that I even am digressing onto that. But when I was looking up, trying to get some information from that speech, just to kind of like reiterate what I had watched, I saw like the chatter happening online of like, Tim Wells was lying. He used IUI, not IVF. And listen, I'm sure there's a very important distinction between the two, but either way, it is the same sentiment. It was a couple who was having trouble having children the quote-unquote natural way, and because of these options that were available to them, they now were able to have children. And the beautiful thing was you had, I believe it's 2 kids there, son and a daughter, and they're both in tears, and like the son, I'm getting choked up as I talk about it, but like it's the image of like the son cheering on his dad from the crowd, as they're talking about like the blessing that it was to bring their kids into this world, and being able to have those options available to them, and there were a lot of moments like that I literally, like, my eyes just start getting watered up, you know. I start like making these ugly faces. You know, I also realized, like, just a side note, I've trained myself, and I guess this is toxic masculinity. I've trained myself to hold back tears, but like in order to do so, you have to, like, you know, make all these funny facial expressions. And what I realized is I am making the world's ugliest faces, and it's actually making it that much worse than if I just allowed myself to cry. So it's been a lesson in trying to catch myself when I'm like doing all these facial exercises to keep tears from falling down my face, and remind myself that you are making some of the most horrendous looking faces possible, and you would just be better off letting a tear or two fall from your cheek, right? Fall onto your cheek. Just a little side note that I wanted to express, that you notice little toxic things that are still ingrained in you, right? But it just felt like hope, you know, and I think for me, when I talk about these things, particularly when you sort of release it into the world of social media and people are leaving their comments, and I think I've talked about this before, but it's incredibly disorienting at times. And I think even when you talk to like people in your life where you're just like, man, they are so passionate about this. They believe it with all of their heart. They genuinely believe that they are on the right side of history. And at times, it's incredibly disorienting, because it's like, man, am I the one who's batshit crazy? You know, and I hate to judge people, and I have to be empathetic, but just for the sake of conversation here, am I the one who is like on the wrong side of history? Because I can't, like, it defies my logic to think that somebody would be so passionate about lies and hate. But the sad reality is that is the current state of a lot of people in this country. And watching the Democratic National Convention and seeing people like Obama, and Michelle Obama really was the one that like took the cake, in my opinion. And then they pan to people in the crowd, and you see, like, you know, as Michelle is talking, they pan to a black woman who's like in tears, and her friend is in tears, and then I'm fucking in tears watching this on TikTok at 8 a.m. It's just like a reminder of like all that I stand for, and I guess, you know, anybody who shares in a similar mindset of what we stand for, right? And what we're fighting and staying strong on, the stance that we're staying strong on, the idea of equality, the idea of you know, not ruling with hate, and wanting everybody to have their, you know, equal shot at whatever the American dream is, or whatever their version of it is, you know, and you realize, you know, in those moments, it's just like, I don't know, it's just a beautiful thing a beautiful reminder is what I would say. It's a beautiful reminder. This is why I go so hard. This is why I eat so much shit from the hate that comes from expressing yourself. It's because I'm really standing for something real. I'm not just making something up to make myself feel comfortable. I'm just legitimately trying to make this world a better place, and for other people who have struggled and things like that. And I think that for me was like the bigger takeaway in sort of watching in and out the last few days, and then, you know, sort of catching up via clips and things like that. Yeah, it's just a beautiful reminder of what this country could be, and why it's so important to speak your voice and to uplift others, right? And why this election is so important, and why somebody like Kamala Harris is so incredibly important right now. With that said, I'm also not like drinking the Kool-Aid to the point where I am not just like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, I have to say, and maybe I'm a hater here. Maybe this added to the energy of the room, or whatever it might be, and maybe because by the way, I have a problem sometimes where I just look for like the corny, or I look for the ick in things, and I can't seem to separate myself from it. I look for the comedy and the I don't know. I just like I remember I relate to this statement so well. I think in I think it's like a great analogist for like my humor or whatever. But I remember when Damon Wayans was on The Breakfast Club and he was talking about, I believe they were at a funeral for his uncle, and him and his brothers are all like, you know, standing together or whatever, and they can't help themselves, like, you know, him, Damon, and Sean, they're and Keenan, they can't help themselves but like just look for the comedy in every situation. So they're there like roasting their uncle who passed. They're roasting the suit that he's wearing. You know what I mean? So like, and it's just their way of dealing with life and things like that. And I relate to that so much in just everyday life. I can't help myself. So I might not be the right person to judge this, but did we really need to have a like musical cue for every single state as they announce the delegates? And specifically, did we need to have Lil Jon performing "Turn Down for What" as they announced Georgia, the speakers to announce the representatives to announce their delegates? You know, it hurts to watch. Also, of all songs, I feel like Lil Jon doing "Turn Down for What," yes, obviously a big hit, but like, I would have much rather just have heard him do a little bit more of like a just classic like Atlanta hip hop record that he was a part of, rather than just like the commercial "Turn Down for What." That is like far too aggressive for that room at that time. But again, this could be me. Maybe other people enjoyed it. I know for when they did like Illinois, they had the music that they would play for the Chicago Bulls intros. When you know you had Michael Jordan and all them, and they had a DJ basically playing a song. I mean, like, I get it. You want to keep the energy up, and like this is an exciting time. It just feels very forced, I guess, is what my take is. Like, I love having Stevie Wonder performing up there. I think that's awesome. But other than that, it all feels very forced, and it's like you have a bunch of people. This is what it feels like. A bunch of people are like, you know what? We got to do something for the young people, show that we're hip. And then it's like, whenever you feel the need to show somebody that you're still hip, you're probably not hip, right? And you should just chill. You know what's hip is just being cool, just relaxing, not feeling like you got to do too much. And that's what it felt like a bit of. And if obviously it's getting roasted on the internet by either side. The Daily Show did a whole thing on it that was hilarious. I was watching it this morning. And ironically, though, this is also what I love. The selective, like, blindness that happens, because the other things that were circulating, like on social media, you had Republicans posting these clips or whatever and talking about how ridiculous they were. Sure, these moments were like the Lil Jon one, but like their argument was like the Democrats love to turn the convention into some sort of like circus event because they have no policy to speak of. But then it's like, didn't you guys have Hulk Hogan come on stage and like rip off his shirt that he was wearing to reveal he ripped off his sleeveless Hulkamania shirt to expose a sleeveless Donald Trump shirt, and then Trump called it Trumpamania, and he's on there doing a wrestling promo at the Republican National Convention. Come on, don't throw stones if you live in a glass house. And then on top of that, who did they have? They had fucking Kid Rock performing. What? Come on. Listen, I have no problem saying, yeah, we turned down for what probably shouldn't have been played there, and that whole thing just felt very forced and awkward, cringy. But I am not going to let you pretend like having Terry, a.k.a. Hulk Hogan, give a wrestling promo at your national convention and having Kid Rock as one of your highlighted performers. Like, come on. Y'all are in the same boat. You're doing the same thing. You are playing the same game. And these are the things, by the way, like this is I'll kind of end on that. These are the things that make you feel like, am I the crazy one? It's disorienting because it's like, how are you guys saying that they've turned the convention into a circus because they have nothing to talk about, but you literally did the same thing in your own way. And then with a straight face, people will go make content on that point and completely have, amnesia to the fact that their chosen side did the exact same thing. At least call out both if you're going to do it, but that's what's fucking disorienting. It's like they literally will watch something happen. We'll have video evidence, we'll have audio, it'll be in writing, it'll be everything. And they somehow, some way are able to either deny it happened or forget that it ever happened at all and just pretend like nothing happened. That's what's disorienting about this whole thing. And they would do it with a straight face and look at you like you're the crazy one. That's what's wild about, this whole situation. I actually do want to touch on something when it comes to some of the things Kamala Harris was announcing. I can't remember if did I mention this? I think I did mention this last week, but just to reiterate, and again, like, this is election selling season. We don't know what's going to actually happen, but Kamala Harris talking about real world practices of stopping corporations from price gouging. Specifically, I think food was mentioned, which obviously is a gigantic problem. I feel that, personally, like, that's the one thing I can be like, this is crazy. I'm paying, $200 every week and a half in groceries, and I live by myself. It's me and a dog, right? And this is sounding like a broken record. I think I'm having deja vu, like I've said this before. And she also, the idea of helping first-time homeowners with a $25,000 credit, up to $25,000. Again, like, these are real-world policy things that, like, have an effect on the everyday person. And that's sort of what, for me, if I'm looking at the candidates and all these things, aside from, like, Trump just being bad for democracy, I could also rest my hat on the fact that at least Kamala Harris is saying the right things and focusing her energy in the right places as far as what's actually going to move the needle for the everyday person. So, that's I guess my takeaway after this convention. And you know what? And politicians in general, they're going to be out of touch a bit. And I think on both sides, some of the entertainment value choices we saw at the convention displayed that. But yeah, that's the world we live in, folks, or the country we live in, I should say. Now I want to touch on what's going on in Venezuela. And, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll do that when we come back. All right, we are back, and I had talked about the presidential election in Venezuela. A couple weeks ago, there were a lot of really big protests breaking out in regards to the election allegedly being stolen by Nicolas Maduro, and a lot of people really fighting back against this. A lot of other countries standing by with the people of Venezuela, saying that they want transparency to find out who actually won. And the update, unfortunately, is not great for anybody who feels like, and the evidence seems to show, that this election was stolen. So you had Venezuela's Supreme Court backing President Nicolas Maduro's claims that he won last month's presidential election, and said voting tallies published online showing he lost by a landslide were forged. Now, the ruling is the latest attempt by Maduro to blunt protests and international criticism that erupted after the contested July 28th vote, in which the self-proclaimed socialist leader was seeking a third 6-year term. Now, in this article, they talk about how the high court is packed with Maduro loyalists and has almost never ruled against the government. In its ruling read Thursday in an event attended by senior officials and foreign diplomats, came in response a request by Maduro to review vote totals that he claimed, without evidence, was marred by a foreign cyber attack staged by hackers from North Macedonia. The main opposition coalition has accused Maduro of trying to steal the votes. The High Court's ruling certifying the results contradicts the findings of experts from the United Nations and the Carter Center, who were invited to observe the election, and which both determined the results announced by authorities lacked credibility. Specifically, the outside experts noted that authorities didn't release a breakdown of results by each of the 30,000 voting booths nationwide, as they have in almost every previous election. Numerous foreign governments, including the U.S., as well as several leftist allies of Maduro, have called on authorities to release the full breakdown of the results. And it's a sad day, obviously, for the people of Venezuela. This is somebody who allegedly has ties to cartels, if I'm not mistaken, is being investigated by multiple governments. From my reading, and I'll never claim to be an expert on these things, but from reports that I had seen around this story, he is allegedly, if he lost and was no longer president, they're saying he would have actually been extradited and brought up on charges connected to crimes with a cartel. So obviously this is not the person that you want to be in charge of people. And even if you're not Venezuelan, as a human being, empathy, right? For people to really be in a helpless state, right? And that's why when I talk about immigration, I don't talk about it from a place of thinking that we should just open the floodgates completely, right? I think there has to be a process, right? For all parties involved, for it to really be a solution that works for everybody. I think you do have to have policies in place. But regardless of kind of where your thought process is on these specific policies that should or shouldn't exist, how can you not have empathy for people who are literally hostages of the powers that be? Right there, they showed up in record numbers to vote, and from what the evidence is showing, or the lack of evidence, there's at least very credible reason to believe that these people's voices are being suppressed, that they're not having their vote heard as they should, and remaining in charge is somebody who allegedly has deep ties to criminal activity that is plaguing the people of Venezuela and holding them back from being a country that could be operating at a far higher level and could be providing a far better quality of life for their citizens and not putting their citizens' lives in danger on a daily basis, right? And that's why people are fleeing places like Venezuela because of that. And again, regardless of your stance on immigration reform and policy, you have to have empathy. And I think also the U.S., the reason why you should care beyond the human aspect, we have a stake in this, right? We are the country that, is one of the main countries that provides a safe haven for people. And the reality is, people wouldn't be leaving their home countries if it weren't for the fact that they were in desperate need of safety and desperate need of something better. So we should be more involved in this. We should be trying to, find a healthy solution for things like this, because it also benefits us, as we try and figure out the best policy for immigration in 2024 and beyond, right? So it's just sad, man. I can't listen, as much shit as is going on in this country, and truthfully, this also, who's to say that if Donald Trump gets in office again, that we don't end up in similar circumstances? I mean, he's already denied the results of a credible election. Why would he want to leave office even after fulfilling, the hypothetical 2 terms? He's already talked about wanting to be a dictator. You've seen his supporters even wearing disgusting T-shirts sort of supporting that. And then again, that's the blind irony of they love to call Democrats, oh, you communists, you socialists. Meanwhile, they're wearing shirts that say, dictator Trump, and they're proudly smiling about that, right? It's just the blind hypocrisy that happens there. I don't know, man. It's frustrating when I can't help but be empathetic to people, and really, when you think about it, it's like the citizens really came out in record numbers and like were energized and motivated, and they were like, enough is enough, and evil has prevailed once again, unfortunately, and I think that's what's a bit frustrating. It feels like an episode of The Boys. I just, that's my pop culture reference to today. I just started watching The Boys on Prime. I know I'm years behind here, but I have no idea how I did not know this show existed. It's phenomenal. It's about, if you don't know, it's about superheroes, but like they use the superheroes kind of like as a means to do political commentary on the state of the world. Like the superheroes aren't truly good guys, So it's more like an attack on corporate America and corporate greed, really. Phenomenal show if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I feel like you're watching like an episode of The Boys where it's like every time it's like, oh, we finally like defeated evil. Nope. Boom. Somebody else, the other shoe drops and evil once again prevails. But I don't know. I wish I had like a way to just pull this around to some positivity. Just a sad day for the people of Venezuela, and their election process, and that's why we in this country have to keep fighting to keep the right people in office and keep the wrong people out of office, so we don't find ourselves in a similar situation like that. Now, with that said, we're gonna turn to some positive news here, positive story in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. All right, so if you've been listening to this podcast for some time, I'm going to love the following story. Not just because it takes place in Puerto Rico, but because it's something I've been fucking preaching forever. Now, granted, this is a little bit of a different twist. I always talk about artists. If you have a platform, you have something, to offer larger than your music, you should be doing so, right? That's always been my argument. So, in Puerto Rico, you have a problem, and I'm getting my Puerto Rico practice in right now. When I go there next week, I could start sounding like a local. You have doctors leaving Puerto Rico in droves, and it's becoming an issue. Let me read some of the statistics actually first before I get into like what this article is about. But Puerto Rico has lost 8,600 doctors out of nearly 18,800 in just over a decade. So almost half of the doctors in Puerto Rico have left. This is according to a 2023 report by the think tank, the Center for a New Economy. Okay, the Center for a New Economy is a think tank. All right. The problem is expected to grow more dire in coming years. Now, obviously, this is a really, really sad issue. And there's a lot of like really sad stories around this, right? One that comes to mind, you had somebody who, because in Puerto Rico, it's tough to get a doctor's appointment. It's tough to get one here in the mainland, quite honestly. My regular doctor, I think in June I called. I didn't get seen until August for like my physical or whatever, right? That's why these pop-up clinics or whatever, the urgent cares are now like the new thing. But in Puerto Rico, it's even tougher. And I saw a story of somebody over there where, they had their appointment with their doctor and they had to wait whatever, I'm just going to throw out 6 months or something like that. And when they saw their doctor found that they had cancer. And the sad part about that story is that had they have caught it, a few months earlier, this person's chance of survival would have been much higher, that they would have actually been able to remove it before it spread, essentially. Unfortunately, because of the amount of time that they had to wait, the cancer spread and grew, and there was no going back at that point. Just a tragic, sad story. Now, this article is a positive one. You have somebody who, he's actually a rapper who went to medical school, right? His name is Dr. Pedro Juan Vasquez, better known by his stage name as PJ Sinzuela. And he's actually been giving back. Now, I'm gonna bounce around on this article, but he became known in Latin America for his music and through his song in 2018. It was actually a collaboration with Bad Bunny. Yes, the Bad Bunny, called ¿Cuál es tu plan? And he actually ended up going on from there to work with Lin-Manuel Miranda. He actually ended up working with Residente from Calle 13. Right, so this dude has like a budding music career, or has been, like he's been on big records with big artists. He now still doing music, but is also devoting his time to being a doctor. They actually say he travels from San Juan, which is the capital of Puerto Rico, to the island's remote areas at least once a week to treat underserved communities struggling with the aftermath of hurricanes, earthquakes, and a frail economy. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, he switched from holding a microphone to a stethoscope, working full-time at a hospital in Ponce for a year. As a general practitioner, he treated patients of all ages, excited to be cared for by a popular rapper. I'm pulling from an article here that I will definitely credit if you want to read more into this. He actually was born in the Bronx, BX all day. Moved with his family to Ponce in Puerto Rico. Later went to Pennsylvania, then returned to Bayamon, which is actually where my father's from. And I have a lot of family over there. And he actually went to the university that's over there and studied to become a doctor in 2015. Music career began to take off, and then when the pandemic happened, he got back into the practice of being a doctor. Now, obviously, okay, so the basis of like why this is a lot of what I've talked about is because I critique artists who are in powerful positions for not doing enough for their people if they truly cared, right? I know this is a little bit of like a different story because the man is a legitimate fucking doctor, right? He's not just a rapper. But the reality is he is somebody he's answered the call, I guess would be a better way of what I was trying to get at. Because truthfully, he could just move to the States and be a doctor here and make a lot more money, if that is the case, right? He could focus full-time on music if that was the case. But he's choosing to be in Puerto Rico, right? And he's choosing to utilize his time to go to underprivileged areas, right? And you think about this, man, because listen, it's hard to manage a career in general, right? I'm sure as a doctor, he stays very busy, and then he has aspirations of being a musician. His music is also very socially conscious. He's very much an advocate for things happening in Puerto Rico. And on top of that, to give back in that way, I mean, there's like, they showcase, him knocking door to door and offering free medical, assistance to the elderly in a lot of these towns. I'm just like, man, more of that. And again, I know not every artist, moonlighted as a fucking doctor. I get that. But we all have something, right? We all have some sort of way to give back more than what we are currently doing. And some more than others. Like, again, this man is genuinely a doctor. So he has a great skill that he can give back to people, relatively easy. Obviously his time is very valuable, but like can go to door and make a difference, basically, right? And then he has a platform where he can spread awareness to what he's doing. And I don't know, man, I see this and it warms my heart, and I'd love to see more of it and more of us trying to do what we can do with what we have, and that's why I've always been like heavy critiquing people like Bad Bunny, because it's like, man, yes, you've done so much with what you've spoken about, but there's still so much more you could be doing. I saw a video, shout out to my guy Dean Huertas, who makes a lot of content around Puerto Rico, and he was giving Bad Bunny credit for being very active in regards to reposting information, particularly I think it was on X, aka Twitter, in regards to what's going on in the election. Puerto Rico has an election coming up in November as well for governor, and Bad Bunny reposting things and trying, I guess, getting people energized in that way. And I thought that was beautiful. But it was also like, yes, and, right? Because, listen, for the everyday person, it's tough for us to do something beyond just reposting, right? Like, and I get frustrated because I'm like, I want to do more. But the reality is I also, like, have to worry about paying my bills. I can't go and just go and become an activist and not and just abandon, you know, my mortgage payments and jobs that I've signed on to do and all these things, right? Now, other things I could be doing, I could be organizing, right? And those are things that are coming to mind for me as I was sort of contemplating while watching Dean Huerta's post or whatever. But like for me, you know what would be cool? Like, because voting is obviously important, and I saw a clip of Bad Bunny talking about if you're not registered to vote, go vote. To me, it's like you're Bad Bunny, and this is insert any artist. This is an important election where we're trying to get out the corruption from a very particular, you know, the party that has been in power, trying to get fresh blood in there beyond reposting shit on your Instagram, because you can do that while you're, you know, on the toilet dropping a deuce. Why not say, hey, in September, I'm going to be hosting a series of pop-ups all around the island of Puerto Rico, and everybody can get in for free. You just have to either be registered to vote or you register to vote on site. Easy, right? And what happens? You get people energized about voting. You get the younger generation to register to vote. And I was trying to look up because I wanted to know, and I'm still doing research. Like, as great as Google is, sometimes it's hard to find information, I guess, on particular places. But I was like, what's the voter turnout in Puerto Rico? Like, how many people are registered versus, like, how many people actually live on the island? I couldn't find that information. But I would say, much like here in the U.S., there's still a large part of the population who doesn't vote or is not even registered. And that's why in, like, 2008, I mean, shit, as controversial and as much as he dropped the ball now, somebody like Diddy, when he was doing the whole rock the vote thing, that was incredibly powerful. You had the youth. I remember I was on a music festival. I was on a music festival called Warped Tour at the time, and they had rock the vote there. And what they would do is they would actually give you free passes, like working wristbands to get inside. And what you had to do was walk around with the clipboard and just try and get people to register to vote. And your exchange, you get to, you know, if you want to go watch your favorite artist play, your favorite band or whatever it was, you could take time to go do that. And that was you know, one of the things that we would do to finagle our way into that festival to sell stuff was I would find, you know, programs like that that would give free wristbands or whatever. Anyway, that was my hustle back in the day, to help elevate my band at the time. But anyway, but why not? You have the platform. You make an announcement. I'm going to be in Ponce on September 14th. We're gonna do a meet and greet. We're gonna do just a free show somewhere. In order to get in, you have to register to vote. You have to be registered to vote or register to vote. I'm gonna bring some of my favorite artists with me from Puerto Rico. We're gonna organize it and do that. Now I know I'm simplifying it. I know if it's an artist like Bad Bunny, he has to. There's a lot that goes into it because you want to make sure people are safe. The amount of people that are gonna come to support this, right? But there are avenues to do it in some sort of capacity, right? I critiqued the Adidas collab because I was like, the shoe is called San Juan. What is Adidas doing to give back to the people? And I even like, why didn't they just do a sneaker giveaway for back to school for kids? How awesome would that have been? Because I was like, oh, they could donate money to help build a school. That's literally anything. These are just little ideas that I'm thinking of. And not, you know, whatever. I don't know how long I've been going on this fucking tangent just now. I blacked out. I'm like, again, I use this podcast. This is like my diary of like flushing out thoughts and ideas right now. But this is what I'm thinking about, guys. This is what I mean. You got to think a little bit outside the box. Push yourself. And even I was like, I'm gonna, you know, I don't know how feasible it is, but even I was just like, what if I reached out to some people that I know? I mean, I don't know a ton of people, but like, why aren't there programs being developed to help get more people to register to vote? And that's why I was looking into the numbers. And I got to find the numbers and see just like if there really is a giant discrepancy of people who aren't registered. But yeah, we could be doing more. That's all I'm saying. The potential to do more is there if you care. And listen, I think it's great that he's on his platform sharing things, and obviously he has a gigantic platform, so that goes a long way. It goes further than somebody like myself sharing things. But also, he has so much more that he could be doing. I don't even look at it as like an attack on him or his character or that how much he cares. I look at it as how much of a potential loss it is in terms of like what could actually be happening right now that's not happening as a result. Like I look at it as like how much wasted potential, right? It's so much wasted potential, so much that could be done if a little bit more action was taken. That's how I look at it. But with that said, shout out to those who are doing the work here. Of course, PJ Sinzuela for a fucking reggaetonero who's also a doctor. You gotta love it. With that said, let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment called Conclusion Stew.
Time for conclusion stew.
All right, so I'll just quickly recap. I feel like I dove into this thing super heavy. Democratic National Convention, emotional roller coaster ride. 1 second, I was, overcome by feeling like I was on the right side of history and seeing people become emotional and really fighting for some beautiful things. On the other side of it, I was cringing and jumping out of my skin by some of the, extracurricular, unnecessary tactics that were used to, I don't know, seem cool or hip. Again, that could be a me thing, but listen, overall, it provided me with a level of confidence of like, it's not a perfect system, not perfect candidates, not a perfect party, but this is the right side of history in terms of what's best for people moving forward, what's best for communities of color, of marginalized communities, and as a whole, what's best for this entire country. That is what I'm thinking of when I see all that stuff. And Venezuela is a tragic and sad example of where we could be heading if specific people are placed in positions of power. We have somebody who is a, former president still denying the fact that he lost an election. Who's to say that moving forward, that's not what's going to happen in this next election? And also, if he does win, who's to say he's going to ever want to leave office again, right? And a Supreme Court that is stacked in favor of him, just like in Venezuela, right? You're seeing the correlation. That's what's on the ticket, and my heart goes out to the people of Venezuela. I hate that you are an example, that you are going through all these things. It's sad, and I really hope that, the other countries out here in UN could be a little bit more forceful and try and be a little more involved in trying to get these things, I don't know, it's obviously touchy, but yeah, just helping these people who are really suffering unnecessarily and being held hostage by a dictator, basically. Now, positive side of things in Puerto Rico, I love this, man. Just people giving back, doing what they can. All right. Big shout out to the artist named PJ Sinzuela, or his real name, Dr. Pedro Juan Vasquez. Just a beautiful thing, man. Just doing what you can, doing your part, especially when an issue like this one, man, it's scary to not have enough doctors. It's a lot of beautiful work that he's doing. So it's a big shout out to him. Now, with that said, no show next week. Also, I think we won't have a show until Thursday trends of, let me see. We'll be back the 5th, September 5th for Thursday trends, because it's Labor Day, and I'll be flying back in around that time, so I won't be able to record an episode. So we'll be back on September 5th with brand new episode. So then, man, I appreciate y'all. I am going to unplug and just enjoy life a bit, come back re-energized and recharged. I hope that you are able to take some time for yourself and your family and be able to enjoy the last, man, it's crazy to say, like the last week of like basically, I know it's not technically from the weather calendar, but like, last week of summer basically for most of us. And yeah, just enjoy, do something fun, do something for yourself. You deserve it. With that said, I'll catch y'all on September 5th, Thursday, September 5th. Till then, stay safe and we shall talk soon. Peace.